Hi everyone, my name is Lauren Somer. I use she, her, hers pronouns, and I live in Bellingham, Washington, which is about an hour and a half north of Seattle. I am majoring in sustainability here, and I have a BA in cultural anthropology from Western Washington University. So, the environmental justice movement began in Warren County, North Carolina in 1982 when a landfill for PCB contaminated soil was built in a predominantly black community, which led to protests and a national movement to fight for the idea that, quote, everyone has a right to live in an environment free from pollution, end quote. The environmental justice movement is needed because there is unequal exposure to environmental health concerns, toxic waste infrastructure, as well as unequal or even a quote lack of enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies, end quote, depending on one's race, income, or color. The goals of the environmental justice movement, as described by Dr. Robert Bullard, the founder of the movement, are procedural equity, which means that, quote, rules, regulations, evaluation criteria, and enforcement are applied in a non discriminatory way, end quote. Next is geographic equity, which means that there shouldn't be, quote, community bias, end quote, to where environmental risks are located. And lastly, social equity, which means that socioeconomic factors shouldn't be involved in environmental decision making. So I focused this week on Uniontown, Alabama. The population in this city is 90% Black with a per capita annual income of $10,934. That's in 2017. Community activists are fighting against a coal ash landfill site, along with water pollution from an extremely antiquated sewer system, as well as a cheese factory nearby. So this started in 2008. A rupture at a plant in Harriman, Tennessee led to a coal ash spill there. They then removed the spilled coal ash from Harriman, where the population is 90% white, and brought it 300 miles away to Uniontown, where effects from the ash are contributing to health problems. Coal ash is deemed not hazardous by the EPA, but it contains mercury, arsenic, and other toxins. Uniontown, Alabama is an example of a frontline community with unequal exposure to polluting industries and is contributing to health problems for people there. Quote, white people didn't want it. Why do you think it's good enough for the blacks? End quote. That's from Portia Shepard, a former Uniontown resident. So this led to the formation of the environmental justice activist group called the Black Belt Citizens Fighting for Health and Justice, which has helped to withdraw a $30 million lawsuit from Arrowhead Landfill, who said that citizens were slandering their company, resulting in lost business. They also helped to earn New Hope Cemetery as a historically designated site by the Alabama Historical Commission that had been desecrated by this landfill. Unfortunately, they were unsuccessful in blocking the landfill's permit with a civil rights complaint dismissed by the EPA in 2018. Their tactics include challenging state policies with legal action, filing complaints to local and state lawmakers, voting campaigns within their community, and partnering with larger organizations. So the fact that Uniontown is a predominantly Black, low-income community, I'm sure had an influence on the dismissal by the EPA of Uniontown residents' civil rights complaint, which allowed the landfill to renew its permit to operate in the area, and also why coal ash was brought to Uniontown in the first place. This community, who in 2017 had a per capita annual income of slightly under $11,000, doesn't have the financial resources to be able to gain the media attention and lawyers to be able to successfully defend themselves. This stems from redlining practices, as residents can accrue generational wealth from home equity in the same way that white people can. Bill, a resident of Uniontown, describes this, saying, quote, property values are dirt cheap, we can't sell, end quote. Uniontown activists, such as the Black Belt citizens, are running into the institutional problem of having to, quote, prove intent, end quote. In Uniontown's film, Mike, the lawyer for Arrowhead Landfill, says, quote, "We do not believe people have a right to say that you are intentionally poisoning the streams, that you are intentionally poisoning our groundwater," end quote, which illustrates this issue. The citizens of Uniontown have to prove discrimination as well as provide proof that they've been harmed by the landfill's actions, which is difficult and requires resources to be able to do. It then contributes to the challenges of fighting against the landfill and other sources of pollution in the area. And here is my list of resources. Thanks very much. Looking forward to hearing what y'all report on this week.